Okay, do we have enough mics to go around? Oh, we can maybe pass them around, but yeah, one there. Maybe, yeah, you can maybe pass that one around. That'd be super. Okay, again, to our audience out there, if you'd like to have some questions, please do put them in the Q&A. I will communicate those to the panelists. So it's a very weird, amazing group of people doing very different things here. Yeah, and what's wonderful, of course, is that the way I had sort of characterized it is, you know, and especially with Brett's historical piece. What I've always loved about the clay framework of this workshop is it's not a style or it's not a workshop about, you know, a certain kind of aesthetic. It's really about the clay, and it's really about how that sort of opens up certain kinds of concerns, issues. And so you're all doing things very, very differently, from, you know, sculptural pieces to furnishings, and of course, in your case, actually really going back to the ornament and rethinking the ornament entirely in a very different way. So I wanted to sort of pick up this question of the haptic aspect of clay. There's something very, Brett, you talked a lot about weight and those kind of concerns. Those move right into questions of labor and efficiencies and stuff. But then there's others which are more aesthetic. You know, we talk of Michael's thing. I mean, when those very heavy things start spinning in that kind of fashion, it's a totally different feeling of this thing. If you guys could reflect a little bit about the clay, like the haptic nature of clay and how you're thinking about it. As I say, it's not an aesthetic that I'm talking about. I'm thinking about, like, what do you guys, you know, how are you designing and thinking through that because of the real proximity of all of your work? It's all about touching this thing and weighing it and feeling it. It's a little bit of a roundabout question, but hopefully you can sort of probe it and maybe we can get a conversation going.
All right, I'll start. I guess I would say for us, I guess we're more of very practical architects and engineers. And we are, you know, we're professional services industry. We're driven by our clients. We all want to preserve these historic buildings in a certain way. And cost is always such a huge driver. It just is. And so we have to come up with innovative ways that we can put a cornice back on a building, or we can make it simpler for our, you know, for the laborers and for the craftsmen to put these things back on, where they're not hurting their back and they're not, you know, they're not getting injured. So I think that that's what's driven us with this. And we're trying to push the manufacturers in Boston Valley to make, you know, to make pieces that are more lightweight, that are more economical, use less materials. And it's more of a cost-driven thing, to be honest.
I'll give you this thing because it makes it a little bit easier.
Interesting question. Well, I don't know. So I guess, yeah. So it's more or less like, so what kind of drew us to the material, right?
Yeah, I mean, you guys work a lot in glass, and I'm sure you moved into terracotta as well. But not so much. So there was something about the weightiness of this thing, you know, celestial bodies that are now floating. So I'm just very curious about the choice of two of those pieces as being ceramic and one glass.
Yeah, well, we really just wanted to explore, you know. We've never really worked with terracotta that much, and or really at all. If I can remember it, we're really used to concrete, you know, glass, metals. So it's really just, you know, our first kind of foray into it. Thought, all right, so how about something that you can touch? We're all about the, you know, the eyes of the skin, you know, plasma, kind of stuff. Yeah, so I don't know. We it's I don't know. It's just like a first kind of thing, you know, for us.
Your first foray into it.
Yeah. But what I thought we would be doing is actually like playing with the clay and stuff. So I'm hoping next time we get to kind of.
You didn't get your fingers in the clay at all?
No, no.
Oh, sorry about
Yeah.
that. We had it. I guess all the students got
Well,
that
that
fun.
was kind of what was in my head. You know, when we got into this, I thought it'd be a big messy project. But I'm really happy with how it turned out. You know, as we get to work through some of our sculptures, get to look at those, see how they interact with the light. Yeah, experiment with hardware and how you know, how that would work, and yeah, get to touch the pieces. That's the main thing. For us, architecture is about the feeling that the space gives you.
Just a
Yeah.
question from the audience was, do you have a plan for where the moon shapes
Yeah.
will go?
Yeah. So right now, or I mean, hopefully they'll end up in University of Pennsylvania in that in one of the like exhibition halls or theaters. We'll see how that turns out. You know, usually how this kind of stuff works is like, if we don't like, we'll play with something that we like, and if it can't work in one space, it'll go into another, or in one way, shape, or form. So I'm hoping we can get it into a project.
I guess. Well, since our object is meant to be engaged, and most of the things in the museum you're not supposed to touch, and so we were thinking about the kind of ultimate durability of, you know, a glazed terracotta, and then we've been getting some pushback from the curatorial team, who said, well, I want it to look like clay more than the colors, and so now we're starting to think about, you know, what does it mean to have just the raw terracotta, and the patina that it might get over the years with all of those greasy fingers, and so, you know, that's another piece that we're quite excited about. So it's, you know, the way somebody leans on it, we brought it down a lot lower than we initially had it. We had it at like 3 feet, and they wanted to bring it down to table height and need something even lower than that. So it really allows people of all sizes and shape to engage it. So there's much more touch than we ever imagined. So it's something quite interesting.
In our case, we started with terracotta as kind of, we were oscillating between a wood bench and a terracotta bench, and now we have a precast concrete bench. And not to dwell on that project, and really to dwell on what we did at ACAW, we were very interested in that, as I said, the texture that we had developed in 2020. And when we were assembling the pieces, we were touching it a lot and saying, wow, wouldn't this be great? You know, too often in architecture, we do these textures and we put them on buildings so they can be seen. But unless it's right down, you know, in the bottom 6 feet, the only place we really touch architecture is the doorknob, you know, and maybe the corners. I mean, architects obviously touch a lot more of buildings than most people. But so that was really a big impetus when we were developing the bench, to really have that texture and that tactile quality. And someone had mentioned earlier, asked the question about ornament. It really is this idea of, it's ornament for the fingers texture, and it doesn't necessarily have to have a pattern, but when it has a rhythm to it, I think that's something that the body, that creates a resonance that the body can feel.
Just speaking to this question of where Brett started us, and there's a question here from a good friend, Christine Yenton, who's a good friend of the the workshop from the Netherlands. She says, how much room could an architect get from the client to spend time during the design process for trial and learning, for material testing, for all the possibilities that sometimes would be groundbreaking? And you know, what is that tolerance within a normal design process to do some of the things that you're doing here right now?
You take that one.
You grab yours.
Mike,
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah. The way we've been doing it, or what I've been trying to push, is getting everything in really early, whether it's like really early into your design. That way, when the VE process goes, you're only losing so much instead of all of it. Yeah, so usually in our, early on schematic design, we'll, like, if we want so many wall sconces, we want custom door handles, we want any kind of detail item, we'll put it in, like, and even put in more than we really want, because we know that there's no asking after the fact. That's what we do. But yeah.
Yeah, a lot of times, I mean, I have, thanks to ACAW, I'm just a little bit of background on myself. I'm a stone person. I mean, I'm a monumental stone carver, and that's a material that I like to touch hands-on. And I think John is really working hard to transform me into a clay guy. Maybe he's working with my wife on that because she's a ceramicist. But I think that spending time with a client, bringing a client to a place like, I mean, it'd be great to bring clients to ACAW. That's never been done that I know of, but at least to Boston Valley to see what they're doing, understand the process. Because I do that all the time with stone, but I haven't done that with terracotta, and perhaps on this project, not to dwell on it, but perhaps that's what we should have done, John, on the bench.
I'll just say from the restoration standpoint, we do a lot of mock-ups, and we don't necessarily get the opportunity to do a lot of innovative ideas like this. If that's in our, historic masonry restoration world, or more in our, concrete, the concrete world. So I'll say that it's one of the reasons that our company has put forth quite a bit of effort recently on trying to do these in-house research projects. And it gives us the opportunity to, one, be involved in things like this, but we also do a lot of it ourselves internally. And that's why, I think we even modeled, I'll be honest, we modeled some of it after what ACAW is doing to get, people's hands dirty and do the, building some of these things, actually doing some of these tests. It's really helped us advance us in the industry. So I think we need more and more of this, just because a lot of times it is driven by cost, and a lot of our clients aren't willing to put that up front when we think it could be a cost savings thing down the road. So it's just, we have to put that, to me, we have to put that legwork in. It makes us better professionals if we do that, even on our own. Put your own time in. You love what you do, spend some more time doing it, and get to be the best of, be the best at it.
I'm surprised to say that I think we're exactly the same. We have to be able to invest that time ourselves. That's why we built a shop that's the same size as our studio. So when the client says they can't afford this, then we show them how they can afford it, or we find another way and find another piece that we were going to throw out, but somehow we got squeezed back in. We all work with clients that have limited budgets. Not everybody, even the Met. It's not this. It's not an open sky. There's a limit, and so it's at our own investment and our own interest and then opportunities like this. Like, I don't think we would have gotten this far with this piece without ACAW.
Yeah, there's one very specifically for you, Brett, and I think it's an important one. It says the question is for the WJE project. Person is Roy in Grafia. Perhaps
It's from Miami.
Okay. This system seems like a logical solution for entire sections of terracotta that need to be replaced on buildings, cornices, water tables, etc. Do you see any similar application for individual units for smaller areas of replacement? As a follow-up, have you begun to understand how replacement of large sections with this system might affect the overall building performance?
I guess to answer the first question, my gut feel is that to do this on an individual basis, you have to provide bearing support for the units above and around it. So the reality is I don't think it becomes very cost effective on an individual basis. I think we intended this to be a continuous or large area that's going to be redone. Say, like we showed, if a cornice has been removed or you got some significant area that needs to be done, I think that's where this becomes economical. It's versus using GFRC. It's versus using, cast metal or fiberglass or other. We want to use historic materials. We want to use clay. So that's the big reason for that. As far as the building performance, we had some discussions because from a preservation standpoint, leaving those joints open probably won't happen from an appearance, that they're going to want those joints to probably be, hopefully we probably would want to do sealant just so we allow the system to move. I think it improves the performance of the building just because we're going to now introduce weather barriers and drainage systems and things behind the system if it's sealant or open joint, either way. So I think we can improve this system, we can improve these buildings, but we will be somewhat restricted by some of the preservation guidelines that are out there and what would be allowed.
Great. Just one other question as a follow-up. This is from Mike Fritz, another colleague from previous. How do you see the timeline of traditional restoration projects changing? Discovery, design phase to manufacturing and install with the evolution of your system?
That's one of the things that I think we still have to work out is we really want to do, and that's why central building preservation was part of our team. We really want to do that cost analysis, and we also want to see what is the timeline for the project, because that is, again, in the industry, it's a huge driver right now as far as the timing on these projects. And in timing means cost. So the longer the scaffolding's on the building, the more cost is there. We hope this would speed up the installation, which would then drive costs down. That's some of the things I think we're going to get a little pushback from some of the traditional, masonry restoration contractors, just because, it's something different, right? We're putting up vertical track and clip and aluminum, and they're used to dealing with mortar and stainless steel ties. So we got a little bit of selling to do from that. And that's part of the mock-up. We can show them that. Anyway, we still have to look through what that schedule is. We hope to improve it. I don't see why it wouldn't.
Maybe I just take it back to this question of R&D and how all your firms are doing it. You guys have different size firms. Clearly, you guys are directly investing in kind of a research group within, and so I'm really interested in that, because the word research in academia means something probably very different than what you're working on. But more and more I'm hearing, especially from architectural practices, that they have a research unit or something like that. I'm just thinking a little bit about something like ACAW or other things which are really focused on this question of research, but collaborative research, moving the industry forward. How are you thinking when I'm sure you have all different types of research units now within your practices. How do you think about creating collaborations or solving problems and stuff? If you could just maybe talk a little bit about what research means to your practices, that would be really interesting.
I'll take a stab at it. Obviously, participating in something like ACAW is great for our firm, because we do a tremendous amount of research. But I would say, if I talk to a real researcher, like, that's not research. Most of that research that we do is project specific, and we will collaborate. I would say a big part of our work is facades for very large projects, and so we will a lot of times we'll work with a curtain wall fabricator or envelope fabricator early on. It'll be a design build scenario. And in those cases, we're working off of their pre-existing system, and maybe we're tweaking it. So we're kind of, we're tuning something that exists as an armature. When we come here, we can really get beyond that. We're not necessarily having to cater to a manufacturer's pre-existing system. And I think that's a big part of it that's fundamental.
Yeah, similarly, our projects our research is project based, or is in search of a way of making something affordable and able to happen. Like in Toronto, when we tried to make this torque ceiling, we were told it was impossible within the budget for concrete to be done, and it would have to be a faceted surface, which we would all collectively die from. So we used our space, so it's not necessarily just the tools that we have, but the space that we have in order to test out conventional materials in unconventional conditions. So torquing 1/4-inch drywall to its limit, and making something that was $1 million over budget to be under budget. And so it's usually those moments that push us towards that idea of research.
Okay. Yeah. So similarly, a lot of our stuff a lot of our research is based on stuff that we want to put on our buildings. That's project based. But I guess the special thing about working with Steven is he's an artist. He considers himself an artist. He has a lot of sculptural ideas that he'll just throw out and be like, let's try this, or let's try this material, as a sculpture, and see what turns out, like, and see if we can implement it in our buildings. Yeah, and then he also encourages that kind of exploration and kind of everyone that works for him. I mean, I pretty much went on a huge tangent with glass, for the last 4 years. It's 2017. And that's also turned out different things for our buildings. And we utilize their shop for, as much as we can as well, like similar to you. Like, I mean, we, if we can't get something in a building, we'll try and figure out in our shop, how can we get this in the building? Can we build it? Is that possible? Or, or maybe let's build a piece of this and, try and prove to the subcontractor that it can be done in this way. Or, yeah, but so there's different directions that we approach this kind of research with, and yeah, it all kind of works towards the same goal of, the kind of getting stuff into our buildings. Really.
I guess a lot of our research is probably project based. But I'll say that, we have a large structural lab. We have a lot of material scientists within our company, and we're able to do more materials research. And honestly, it's to anticipate failures. It's to make us more knowledgeable. So it's a little bit different in that we're doing research on materials because we want to know, if we have a client or we find something that's an oddball case, we want to know that we're on top of it. We know what it is and we can solve it. And the other part is technology. We have to stay up on technology, from all of our assessments to, we're even working somewhat with Boston Valley too on some of the, the scanning technologies, and how can we, I think Roy asked, how can we speed, or someone asked, how can we speed this up? Well, the reality is we have to deal with a certain procedure to go through most of the cases, a design, bid, build process, which doesn't allow us to get the manufacturers involved very early in the process. So in a timing process, how do we get technology involved from our standpoint that they can use to accelerate the manufacturing process? So we're doing some in-house research a little bit. We look at those types of things. So how does it make our in-house research is almost more of how does it make us better as a company, but we're looking at more things like this, where it's an innovative design. Now we're going to take that design. We enjoy all the nuts and bolts and putting it together, and we enjoy breaking it. So we're going to, you know, we're going to throw some things at this and see how it performs.
I wanted to just open it up to the audience here, or if you have any questions. Yeah, please. So the question is really tied to flashing on a parapet relative to this rain screen system.
I think it's simple. I mean, it's set up that way where we're going to have a water barrier, you know, we're going to have a water barrier behind the rain screen. So it would just be a matter of, you know, we know that we saw in some of the details, we know that we could add more pieces to this and extend above the cornice and make this a larger parapet assembly. The reality is it's all just waterproofing detailing behind the assembly. It's actually a good thing because you can see it, you could test it, you could do all that before the assembly goes on. So it's just, I think it makes it simpler, honestly.
Any other questions? Okay, so we're going to take a break. Thank you so much. First, the panel. So we're going to take a 15-minute break. We're at a good point right now. Please stretch out and so forth before we come back for the keynote from NADAAA Tirani.